there was a new assignment. "How can I help?" Johannes asked. "Until you're caught up to speed, I'd prefer to handle it myself," Feddersen said and puffed his small but formidable chest. "Besides, I have a meeting in an hour with the chief. He wants me to present a couple of recommendations I had for improving the force. Ask your colleagues to fill you in." There was no need telling Johannes twice. Relieved, he shut the door before Feddersen had the chance to change his mind. Johannes surveyed his office. The remnants of its original use as a copy room were still apparent. Johannes wandered down the hall to find someone who could tell him what had gone on in the past 2 weeks. As it turned out, he hadn't missed much. "At least nothing your boss would have helped with?" said Marcel. Although Marcel was Isabel's superior, he was still a rank below Feddersen. "We had a drug-related homicide, a guy was stabbed to death by another junkie, and a woman died of electrocution, which turned out to be an accident." Back in his office, Johannes railed at Feddersen for being an inveterate blowhard and wondered how he would pass his time. He would have no other choice than to press for a new assignment. However, his resolve faded when a red-faced Feddersen stormed into the room and ordered Johannes into the adjoining office. Short of breath, the overweight detective plopped himself down into a swivel chair and scowled. Since Johannes had a pigment disorder that left him with one blue eye and one green eye, Feddersen never knew which to look into. Feddersen was a tiny man with a double chin and a face covered in acne and patches of gray stubble. Johannes could even see the red veins in his bloodshot eyes. The chief detective grabbed a cigarette with his nicotine-stained fingers and frantically tried to light it. He often flouted the station's smoking ban in his office. Johannes felt Feddersen was the biggest asshole in the city. "I was just about to present the chief with my suggestions for optimizing the internal structure of our organization when there was a news bulletin on the TV," said Feddersen. "A cross was discovered on some beach in the middle of nowhere. It must have been placed there recently." He paused and savored the bit of knowledge he had with an air of self-importance, while Johannes wondered what could be so remarkable about a cross. "Is that against the law or something?" Johannes asked, to break the silence and undermine Feddersen's smugness. "The problem, of course, isn't the cross." Feddersen took a few loud puffs of the cigarette. "The problem is that there was a man nailed to the cross." Feddersen took a great deal of satisfaction in having impressed his subordinate. But then he quickly frowned again. "We both should take this case. I have already pointed out that we have a lot of catching up to do since you devoted the last 2 weeks to sports, but the chief thinks that my expertise is needed, especially since there's already a camera crew hanging around. We'll head to the crime scene immediately. The medical examiner is already on her way, and from what I've heard, it's not a very pleasant sight." After parking the police car along the edge of a small rural road, Feddersen and Johannes traipsed through 2 recently harvested fields. Johannes found it difficult to get used to Feddersen's driving style. It took him so long to shift into a higher gear that the engine seemed to be perpetually redlining. They both abruptly stopped when they reached the foot of a small hill. "What the hell?" said Feddersen. Johannes couldn't agree more. Before them was a gently sloping meadow, and a giant wooden cross was towering a 1/4 mile away. Even from this distance, it was possible to see something that looked like a giant doll hanging on the cross. Johannes gulped and followed Feddersen. A fresh wind blew from the Baltic Sea, carrying a salty, musty smell. Johannes felt the cold creep through the fibers of his thin wool sweater. The sky had clouded over, and a fine drizzle began to fall. Police tape fluttered from the metal poles which had been inserted into the ground around the cross. In front of the tape, a number of people jostled to catch what was going on. Johannes was surprised at how quickly the news had spread in this remote area. "Hyenas from the press," Feddersen said. "How did they get here before we did?" asked Johannes. "The cross was discovered by fishermen. They headed closer to shore and realized there was a man hanging on it.